Welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. This is where we start out in paradise, out in Costa Rica. We get a quick report from there, and then we bring it back to Florida and take a trip around the state. We've got 12 of the preeminent fishermen ever to fish Florida waters as our action spotters, and they are going to bring us up to date each and every week on what's biting, where the bait is, what's going on, what they see on the weather map. You want to learn about Florida's fishing, you have come to the right place. Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast is brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara, Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat span offshore hybrid boats? You want to check out youngboats.com. We're going to start our trip around Florida. We're going to take a little detour first and go to Paradise. Of all the billfish destinations I've been blessed to fish in my life, my favorite was certainly Nosara, Costa Rica. That's where Craig Sutton spends a lot of time at his establishment, Nosara Paradise Rentals. Craig, are you with us?
Yes, sir, Captain Ricky. Right here, buddy.
How are things going in Costa Rica? They got any coronavirus down there?
Nah, they do not have one case in our area.
Wow.
I mean, they're pretty restrictive. They got driving restrictions. You can't be outside of your house only on certain days and stuff. I mean, they're a little more restrictive than we were, for sure.
I see. Well, maybe that's why. Maybe that's the way to go. You're still hoping for an August 1st opening, right?
That's the date they've told us. Hoping that's going to be the day. We sure need it. It's a great time to be fishing down there.
Man, it'd be perfect for the fishing. I was down there in August last year, and Craig, I've never seen such fishing.
Oh my gosh, it's special time down there for sure.
Now you told me off the air that you have had some tremendous weeks of booking, people looking forward to getting away from this mess for a while. If somebody wants to come see you and come down there and catch a black marlin, a striped marlin, a blue marlin, Pacific sailfish, a rooster fish, a cubera snapper, a big mahi, I could go on all night. They need to make their reservations now, don't they?
Or just sit on one of the top beaches in the world. Too.
Oh, that's true, too.
Absolutely. I really feel once we get things back opened up down there, we're going to see a real big push, people wanting to get out and, go down there and experience something really special. Last week, we had a big week. It was the best week we'd had in 12 weeks in sales for next year. And the big majority of them were Florida Sportsman radio listeners that want to take advantage of the discounts we're offering right now.
Well, I don't blame them a bit, and I appreciate you mentioning us. I surely do, and I'm glad it's working well for you. I bet you the monkeys down there aren't very happy. Nobody's feeding the monkeys, are they?
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah, I bet those fish are pretty unhappy, too. They haven't, had anybody throwing a ballyhoo in front of them or a live bonita or something.
Golly, would I love to be the first one to do that. Oh,
the stories
goodness.
I'm getting out of there of the guys that are sneaking out and fishing is phenomenal. Absolutely off the chart. From yellowfins, marlin, sailfish, big dorado. And it's like the fish really, they're tired of their vacation. They're wanting to eat again.
They're ready to fight somebody.
They're ready. They're ready.
Cool, Craigie. Well, how can people get a hold of you if they want to come to Nosara?
They can call me at 904-591-2161.
All right. They can reach Craig Sutton that way, and they can mention that they're a Florida Sportsman listener, and he is going to give you a deal.
Thank you, Ricky.
We appreciate it, buddy. Talk with you next week. Now, let's start back home where living is easy. We're going to start up in Northeast Florida where we check in with our buddy, Captain David Voorhees. David, can you hear me?
I'm here, Captain Ricky. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fine. I tell you, just by judging by your voice, answering the phone and starting our conversation with you off the air, I got a feeling fishing's been pretty good for you the last few days.
Rick, I've talked to you many years, and I've always told you one of the things I really like to fish in Northeast Florida. Of course, I always like when that moon is straight overhead. And the other thing I like is I always like to fish that last of the outgoing tide.
Right.
So this week we've got both of those things lining up together, and it looks like it's going to be a great week. Today was no exception. It was a phenomenal bite today. We were able to get out there, fish the last of the outgoing. I had two anglers today, and by 8 o'clock they had already limited out on redfish.
How about that?
Yeah, really good bite. We saw lots of fish today. We caught some really nice flounder. Not a lot of trout. I think the trout are still biting at nighttime, but plenty of reds, plenty of flounder, and just a variety of species.
David, were you sight fishing those reds early? Could you see them with their backs out?
No, didn't see them, but, it was some shallow areas along the shore that I know where these fish are hanging out. Of course, we pushed in there and just 8, 9, 10 inches of water, and we could see these schools of reds. We had to dead stick them. I mean, we had to soak our baits out there and let them sit. We found a new bunch of fish today, which is always exciting, and they were very aggressive. It was just an exciting day today. I just felt like every spot we went to, the guys caught fish. I knew we were going to have a pretty good day. And it's so hard to explain to people how important the tides are up here in Northeast Florida, but it is absolutely everything. I mean, it is so important. And I just love fishing that last few hours of the outgoing tide, which is what we had now early in the morning. I think we had low tide today around 9:30, 10 o'clock, somewhere around there, which was perfect. And then, of course, first thing in the morning you get out and the moon is directly overhead. I can't tell you what it is, about that, but, paying attention to those things, it's made me appreciate that particular phase of the moon. And I've told you that many a times, Rick. Give me that moon straight overhead, and I absolutely love it.
Gotcha. All right, that's outstanding. So the majority of your action was this morning, right?
Absolutely. It was all morning. We pretty much, every place we went to, we caught fish today.
Oh, that's great.
And talked to several other captains, and they all were saying, yeah, it was a really good bite. But, last week we just didn't have the good tide. We fished that incoming tide most of the day. And, it was tough. I felt like I was chasing fish all day long. But today, to get that last of the outgoing tide, it meant everything, and I think we're going to have a really good bite this week.
I see. All right, I got to tell you, as you know, this weekend was a snapper opener talking about offshore. It must have been nice to see a place to park at the boat ramp today, because the participation in this weekend snapper season was unbelievable, and everybody I talked to had little trouble maxing out. Of course, one fish per person, but a lot of fish up in the 25 to 28 pound range, if you can believe that. The one thing I wish more guys would do is, I hate all the culling that goes on, because I know a lot of those fish don't make it, and that gives the South Atlantic Council another reason to want to keep it closed for 360 some odd days a year. But certainly no shortage of red snapper. Steve Proctor said he went to his spot, pulled up on it, took his boat out of gear, and the fish came up all by themselves. They were swimming all around the boat, and it was simply a matter of picking out the one that you wanted to catch. So that was great. Kingfishing was great even today. Today is the past champions tournament. As of last check, a 47-pound fish was leading. So sounds like that tournament's going very well. All the kingfish tournaments have been very, very good this year, David, and the weather continues to work real well for us, except for maybe a few afternoon thunderstorms that are coming up. But right now, offshore fishing, very, very good. Hey, David, a quick question before you go that I'm dying to know. If you could reduce the bag limit of one species in your area, would you, first of all, you may say, no, I don't want to at all. And second off, what would it be?
I would like to see the redfish limit go back to one per person.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. You think we're putting too much pressure on them?
I think we are. I think we are. And I would just like to see it go back to one per person, because there's times when I get out here and I'm really not comfortable with bringing home my 6 redfish on a 3-person charter. And that happens quite a bit. And I don't know, call me crazy, but that's what I would like to see.
Don't blame me a bit. David, thank you so much for your great report as always, and we look forward to talking with you next week.
All right, Ricky, tight lines, and we'll see you next week, buddy.
Okay, buddy. Now let's hop on 95, travel down south a little bit, and check in with our buddy, Captain Jim Ross. Jim, how are you?
I'm doing good this week, Rick. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, I've been able to get out and fish and scallop and do all that. I understand your back's on the mend. I hope you're going to be back on the water soon.
Going to be about 12 weeks, but I'll get there.
Man, I don't know if I can stand it. Well, what are you hearing from Justin? How's he inshore fishing?
He actually fished the Banana River a couple of days here recently, and the Banana River has got some pretty decent fish in it right now. They're catching some snook on topwater. The first thing in the morning, this is kind of the way he's starting his day. He's starting off in the morning with topwater around the mangroves and spoil islands, around the Thousand Island area, and just concentrating on areas where there's mullet. That seems to be the whole key right now. Some of that area has calorpa, which is an algae type bottom cover. There is a little bit of grass growing in there, witching grass and Cuban shoal grass, but not a ton of it. And then there's a lot of just sandy barren areas. Concentrating on mullet over the bottom structure is the best way to find the trout. The redfish and the snook don't seem to be as concerned with the bottom structure as they do just the size of the mullet pod. If it's a smaller pod, he's typically not finding much on it. If it's a bigger pod, he's finding redfish that's holding around. And I think that the mullet are acting as sentries, as we have just a huge number of dolphins inshore right now, and dolphin mammals that are eating trout, redfish, and snook. And we feel like the mullet are acting as a sentry to try to keep those predator fish aware that, hey, you've got a dolphin in the area. So he seems to feel that seems to be the best case scenario till about 8:30 or 9 o'clock. Or like this morning, it lasted almost till 9:30 because there's some cloud cover. Then he switched over and throwing some paddle tails or some live bait or some chunk bait, just depending on the mood of the fish. Right now, the fish have been a little less aggressive here the last 2 days, so he's actually been using some chunk bait, casting it up underneath mangroves and overhanging docks and things that are in that Thousand Island area. That seems to be the key. He's tried the tarpon twice, yesterday and today, and the tarpon just didn't want to play. He netted some live pogies that he found out in the middle of the 6 to 7 foot sections of the river, and there's tarpon rolling around there, but the only thing that they managed to get is those 5 to 8 pound sail cats. They haven't hooked any tarpon while trying to do that. But those sail cats will run side by side with them. And if you remember a couple of weeks ago when we were fishing those tarpon in the Indian River side, there are a bunch of bull sharks in with them as well. He hasn't seen any bull sharks on the Banana River side just yet, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're not there because he's not catching any of the tarpon or getting any bites from the tarpon either. So it's just been sail cats the last few days. So that's, it's hard to tell if they're there or not if you don't actually get a chance to see them. Now, the other thing is we just had this snapper season that just went on. Of course, I'm about as opposed to that whole thing as a person can possibly be. And some people are all for it. Some people are against it. Some people are neutral. Personally, if you don't have enough fish in that water on the entire east coast of the Atlantic seaboard to open the species up to more than 4 days of harvest, in my opinion, leave them closed. Because if you're saying there's not enough, then there shouldn't be enough because you're supposed to be the experts when it comes to the numbers of fish out there. Now, having said that, virtually every person that I talked to that went out limited out. So, as hard as a unicorn is to find, apparently there's a few people that found them over the weekend in the Central East region. And we had fish anywhere from 4 or 5 pounds all the way up into the low 30-pound range. So as far as the size and year class goes, I think that in our particular part of the world, we have a pretty diverse population from what we can tell anyway. Not being, quote unquote, expert.
Jim, the only comment I can even make on that'll make sense to anybody is that I've snapper fished off of Northeast Florida for over 50 years, and that's a long time. I have seen red snapper come to the surface probably 10 times in my life. It's all been in the last 2 years. I had a friend of mine yesterday that went to his snapper spot, and they didn't even wait for him to put a line in the water. He set his trolling motor, and he's rigging up, and somebody looks over the side and said, "What are those?" And the red snapper had come all the way to the surface. It's
what cobia used to do.
Right. We can't get off on this, but you and I both know that The numbers are absolutely ridiculous. Hey, listen, you concentrate on getting your back better this week, and we will get another report from you a week from now, if that's all right.
I'm looking forward to it, and tell everybody out there I said, hey, and go out there and catch yourselves a memory.
You got it. Thank you, Jimmy. Let's swing it on down to one of my favorite parts of Florida, Stuart, Florida, the sailfish capital of the world. That's where Captain John Earhart hangs out. John, are you with us?
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
Tell me what's going on in Stuart.
We just finished up fishing the first part of our red snapper season here in Stuart. I got to tell you, I had a pretty awesome start. We limited out the first day in 2 drops, and then we caught a small Warsaw by most standards, but I mean, it was 40, 50 pounds, so that was a nice little bonus when we were bottom fishing. We did that for 2 or 3 days. Now the season's going to be closed again until Friday, and then when it opens up again on Friday, we'll probably fish those red snapper one more time, and that'll probably conclude that part of the season. Other than that, the trolling seems to have slowed down a little bit. They're catching a lot of kingfish, bonita, some big cobia, and most of that's in about 100 foot of water, maybe into 70, 75 feet of water. You know, this is on the artificial reefs and wrecks, and then the natural 6-mile reef. That's where most of the action's been trolling this week. If you feel like venturing out into the deeper water, I've seen some guys have been catching some bigger blackfin tuna, 20, 30 pounders, and that's in about 300 or 400 feet of water. Most of these guys are catching them vertical jigging, but you could slow troll live baits in that deeper water, get them down a little bit in the water column, fish earlier in the morning, and you might catch 5 or 6 of these bigger blackfin tuna this time of year.
Okay, that sounds good. I love fighting those big blackfins, there's no doubt. But what about inshore? What's going on there?
The inshore has been very productive for large breeder-sized snook, you know, fishing around the St. Lucie Inlet. I mean, you can look down and see the bottom on the incoming tide, and there's probably 100 to 200 snook sitting out there getting ready to spawn. Fishing live baits closer to the bottom is obviously going to catch bigger snook. Try and reel them in with heavier tackle, get a quick picture and release them safely so they can continue to breed. There's been some tarpon around the inlet as well, a lot of jack crevalles, some mangrove snappers. Been pretty productive inshore. So if you want to catch big snook or big tarpon right now, it's an excellent time to do it in Stuart, Florida, for sure.
Yeah, I'm living proof that a 40-pound snook is very, very doable in Stuart, Florida. I mean, that's a monster, but there are some there that are that big, aren't there?
Yeah, everybody wants to get that 40-inch mark, and you know, I tell people if you want to catch a 40-inch snook, you come to Stuart in July or August, and it's not a guarantee, but there's probably a 90% chance you're going to get one.
Yeah, of all the crazy things, I caught a 40 and a 42 on successive casts with a DOA terrorized at the crossroads. That wouldn't happen. That wouldn't happen every day, Cap.
Man, that's awesome.
Yep. One of my very few great accomplishments in life. Well, John, I'm glad to hear that it's good inshore. It sounds like your offshore could use a little pick-me-up. Boy, we sure could use a few more red snapper days, couldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I did pretty well in the few days that I had. You know, we'll see what Friday brings, but, you know, I'm just glad to have had a season this year. So I'll take it. I certainly would welcome more days, though, if they give me more days.
Yep. We got to figure out a way to get it done. Hey, John, before you go, if they were going to lower the limits on any fish in your area, what fish would you like to see get more protection?
What fish would I want to see get more protection? Like increase the amount of restriction on?
Right. Reduce the bag limit.
I would say probably either Spanish mackerel or flounder, just simply because, I mean, we're allowed to keep 15 Spanish mackerel right now. And, you know, unless you're smoking them, there's not really any need to keep that many.
Right.
But other than those 2 fish, I don't really see a need to restrict much right now because I think they're doing a pretty good job. You know, snapper is pretty good. You know, just we don't get a lot of flounder around here. So, I mean, they could definitely restrict that a little bit, and I don't think it would really upset many people.
Yeah, probably not. And you're right, 15 Spanish is a little bit ridiculous, although they seem to be pretty healthy. But and Lord knows we have enough red snapper. Cap, I sure do appreciate it. We look forward to getting your report next week.
Yep, I look forward to talking to y'all next week.
Thank you, John. Let's travel south, see if that's where the fish are hanging out off of Miami. And we got our man, Alan Sherman, ready to give us the news. Alan, what's going on in Miami?
The fishing has definitely slowed down here. I think we can say we're in the summer doldrums now.
Right.
Got very hot here this past week, although we did have some major rainstorms that hit us in the late afternoons. And they were a big concern. But back to the fishing, there is some fishing going on. It's just not red hot. You really have to, time it out just right. The snook fishing's been really good on the beaches. There's not a lot of places in Miami area that you can fish the beaches, but if you're out at the crack of dawn before the lifeguards get out, you can sneak out there and make a few casts and possibly catch a few catch and release snook, decent sized fish. These are spawning snooks, so they can be anywhere from 10 to 30 pounds, but they've been around in pretty good numbers. Further offshore, the fishing's been a lot more difficult. There are quite a few false albacore, bonitas, for, fun fishing. Get the kids out early in the morning, and they will definitely battle for 20 minutes on normal tackle. Mixed in with those bonitas have been some really nice kingfish, not a lot of them. But while you're catching these bonitas, there's a good chance of getting a 10 to 20 pounder before they shut down around 11 o'clock in the morning when it starts getting hot. A lot of the guys are moving closer to shore and doing some bottom fishing. Cooler water on the bottom, and they're catching some vermilion snappers and yellow-eyed snappers. These fish are biting anywhere from, I'd say, 150 feet to about 240 feet. Some of them are around wrecks, others are just out in the sand. But it's, cut squid on the bottom, chicken rigs, and they're doing well with those fish. Other guys are concentrating on these big mutton snappers that have been around, and they're on some of the wrecks anywhere from 100 feet on out to about 200, and some of the deeper ledges, and they're fishing right on the bottom with live ballyhoo and live pilchards.
Gotcha.
Nighttime bottom fishing has been excellent. Yellowtail, mutton, and mangrove snappers on all three reefs. The 25 feet, 40 feet, 80 feet. You find the right spot, and it's pretty easy to get a 10 snapper limit. Going inshore, the only real inshore fishing we have here in Miami is bone fishing, which has been excellent south of Key Biscayne. The oceanside flats and the mainland flats have been schooled up with bonefish, and some of them have been fairly large. Two other fisheries that we have going on are the peacock bass fishing in the urban canals, the local canals, and some of the lakes. That fishery's been really good. Quite a few peacocks being caught. And then flamingo continues to be very good, especially in the Florida Bay side. Snook, redfish, sea trout, and then there's been quite a few triple tail. And if you like bending a fishing rod, there are always lots of sharks for catch and release. And, we have plenty of opportunities. It's just being in the right place at the right time.
I understand that. One question I had for you, Alan, on the big muttons and the bigger mangroves, do you sometimes find that they tend to move inshore, a little further inshore at night, or is it the same, you fish the same area in the daytime you do at night?
Well, I think you got different groups of fish. You've got the muttons that like to hang out on the wrecks, and those fish are normally on the larger side. But, on the reefs, we always came across decent-sized muttons. This time of the year, fish up to, say, 10 pounds. They're harder to come by because they get, fished a lot. And, the legal size on a mutton snapper today, I'm going to say it's 18 inches, but
Right.
it may be 20, and I have to take another look. But the size limits have gotten, larger on them. So these fish are starting to grow, but as soon as they hit, it's a problem with the lower size limits. As soon as that fish gets to be that size, if you catch them, usually you keep them. So they don't get to grow to be giants like they used to. Our commercial fishing really put a hurting on them many years ago, and all of our species, and they're definitely struggling to come back in the numbers I once remembered.
Well, old guys like you and I we can remember when we rode out there and caught plenty of fish. Yep, I know what you mean, buddy.
Yeah.
That's a great report. I'm pleased to see that the muttons and mangroves are still holding up. Now, we've got a full moon coming up early in August, right?
We do, yes. A new moon this coming weekend, and one of the things that you might look forward to having happen on the full moon of August is the cubera snapper fishing. Typically, that's when they'll start their spawn. But otherwise, these fish are, you catch the right conditions, and it really comes down to conditions. Those fish like a little bit of current. If the current's running the same direction the wind is going, you stand a really good chance of doing well. get a current that's going against the wind or no current, and you're going to struggle.
Gotcha. Alan, as always, we appreciate it, and I look forward to talking it over with you next week.
Same here, Rick.
Thank you, buddy. Now, let me tell you something. I love this guy. This guy is becoming the legendary Keys fisherman, certainly the best daytime sword fisherman I know, none other than Captain Nick Stanczyk from the Broad-Minded. Nick, are you with us?
How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing good. Tell me what's going on off Alamorada.
Well, we've had some nice weather the last couple of days, real calm. The fishing's been okay. Hadn't been red hot. We've had a few slow days, but we got in on some good bottom fish action. We had quite a few barrel fish, a couple of snowy groupers, a couple of wreck fish.
Woo.
And then the swords have been a little tough for me. We haven't had any bites the last couple of trips, but there has been a few caught. Chase on my old boat, Captain Chase Bolton, he caught one yesterday and one the day before that. So there's a couple around. You just got to make your bite count. The dolphin have been fair. There's been some around, not as good as it should be, I'll say that, but some of us find some undersized dolphin and some are hitting some keepers.
Yeah, I'm hearing that all down the East Coast, that there's been tiny ones, but there hasn't been near the number of dolphin for this time of year that we should have. Is that kind of how it is in the Keys too?
100%. Yeah, it's been tough for sure, especially for the keepers. And for being mid-July, it ought to be pretty good right now, and it's tough on it.
I'll be darned. How about you, tuna?
A few blackfins in the hump, but I heard one boat on the radio today said that he caught some skipjacks and he left. But I did see some of the boats on the marathon hump catch a handful of tuna. It's not a ton, but jigging up on the vertical jigs, at least a handful enough to get, a few nice dinners out of. Some of our boats have been hitting on the staying on the reef. The mangrove snapper spawn has turned on, and a lot of the boats been getting their limit, 20 to 30 fish in a couple hours. So at least that's been encouraging.
Oh, that's good fishing. That's good fishing. Backcountry been pretty good?
I'm going to say it's been decent. Captain Charles Hertel, he's one of our younger guys at Bud and Mary's. He caught 3 tarpon the other day on a trip. Not big ones, juveniles around that 30-pound range.
Uh-huh.
So that was good action. Then he had some triple tails that they caught and released, and then he had a few snook and a few reds. So that was at least decent fishing, at least the tarpon. That was good to see him catch some tarpon, even though they weren't monsters, but good to see some action.
Indeed. Hey, Nick, if you were in charge of the fisheries in your area and you could reduce the bag limit on one fish, what would you reduce?
I guess probably swordfish, to be honest with you.
Really?
Although, yeah, not many boats really hit their limit anyhow. But I guess, kind of transitioning from, growing up, we always had commercial permits and sold a lot of fish. When I was a little kid with my uncle and my dad. But obviously the limit's 1 per person. On a private boat, you can keep up to 4, on a charter boat up to 6. We don't see charter boats with 4, 5, or 6 fish, but it wouldn't bother me if the swordfish, maybe they increase the size a little bit and reduce the bag limit, say, from 4 fish per recreation boat maybe to 2 fish, or even on a charter boat. 2 fish would be plenty, to be honest with you, in my opinion, nowadays.
I like it. I like it a lot. And let me tell you what, spoken from the preeminent swordfish fisherman, maybe on the east coast of Florida right now, certainly on the east coast of Florida, maybe on the east coast of anywhere, that carries a lot of weight with me. That's something we need to look into then. As always, we appreciate it, Nick, and we look forward to talking with you next week.
All right. Hopefully I'll have a good swordfish report for you, and we'll talk to you then.
They're going to get better again, I promise. Thank you, Nick.
See you later, Rick.
Let's swing on around a little bit to the 10,000 Islands area and check in with our buddy Steve Dahl. Steve, are you with us?
I am. You may want to call Nick and let him know all the swordfish on 3 feet of water back here in the 10,000 Islands.
Yeah, I'll tell him that. You may see him in the morning if I told him that.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he'll have that boat parked in there for sure.
One of the things about being maybe 20 something, I don't think Nick's even 30 yet, is he? I'm pretty sure he's in his late 20s. Yeah, one thing about being a 20 something is you can go anywhere at any time. There's no such thing as being too tired.
Isn't that the truth? When did that change for us?
I can remember coming in off a real good offshore charter when I was an old charter boat mate, and thinking, golly, I'm glad I've got a date tonight. I've got to go out. This has been such a great day. I've got to go make it a great night. Now we catch more than 2 fish. I want my pillow.
Yeah, a date. You mean there's life after a charter?
Yeah.
I mean, what? I thought you just come home.
I remember it. I really do. Tell me what's going on in 10,000 Islands.
talked last week about kind of if we get some rain, it's going to kind of invigorate the waters down by us. It's a classic dog days of summer pattern. We've gotten it. So, and there's current running. Boy, it's doing real good. A couple other captains are kind of on this pattern too. In particular, Captain Justin Napier, who does a lot of stuff down in more of the western side of our region, pretty much Chuckaluski all the way through Marco. So it's kind of a cool pattern that really holds true. That if you get, you find these feeder creeks on the northern end of, if you look at the chart and look at how our orientation is, kind of go, the north-south orientation, if you will, when we talk about, the true backcountry. And if you look at the very back, we have a ton of feeder creeks and rivers feeding into the system. And, when you get these summertime rains, there's an influx of current coming through there, whether the tide's running or not, you're going to get some current. And he's crushing them on the darker colors, the blacks and blues and the purples and the blacks and purples. And, that's a kind of a classic pattern in our area, especially because of the darker water, a little bit more tannic. But, when you get that runoff, it kind of gets a little bit dingy and maybe even a little bit milky, depending on how heavy the rains are. So don't be afraid to throw dark colors. A lot of people think that, you need bright colors and dark water. And then it's something not talked about a lot. And it really should be, because dark colors actually give a bigger silhouette in the water. If the fish is looking up, we've got summer skies that are upon us. That darker hue actually shows up better than a light colored bait.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So, and, if you think about some of the offshore stuff, I'm sure you can attest, there's a reason black and purple is probably one of the better trolling skirts out there.
Sure it is.
And it's the same effect. Fish are looking up and it gives it a silhouette as opposed to, say an all white skirt that would probably blend in. So little things like that, that's a perfect, we get so tried and true, white will catch everything. And it will, don't get me wrong. But, when they're not biting, a particular one, don't be afraid to experiment a little bit. And that works throughout our whole region for the big four, I like to call it: tarpon, trout, redfish, and snook. So definitely have some darker hues in your arsenal.
I love it. Have you heard anything from offshore at all?
Yeah, they're smoking them. I got to get out there. So they are doing really well. The African pompano bite's been fantastic. I mean, the guys are really loading up, and they're running. Plenty of fish, lots of red grouper, and there's some gags, and there's a whole bunch of stuff kind of within like a 40-mile run. But I mean, there's guys making 80, 90-mile runs, and granted, that's only 250 feet of water in our area.
Right.
It's worth the trip. We've talked about it a lot in the past. The commitment, definitely go with a group of guys, get 5, people together, share the gas. It's worth the run. Pick and choose your days, watch the weather, but it's really easy fishing once you get there. And bottoms holding snappers and groupers, and we're getting some black groupers in the mix, which is fantastic, and some big ones at that. And then you're getting your African pompanos. There's certain areas you're starting to see some permit. There's cobia in the middle. It's really just all you can eat buffet out there, because everything it's really just doesn't get the pressure that a lot of closer structure gets on our coast. So the one thing that's been significantly different for us is, we've talked about how the tackle industry evolves and how we're pretty simple creatures here in Florida. We don't like to mess around with too many things that aren't tried and true, but jigging in general offshore has got huge, more so on the east coast of Florida than the west coast. But the west coast now is finally realizing that is a very efficient way to take fish. And the slow pitch and the long fall jigs, which is a little bit of a international style of jigging that's really caught on here in the States the last couple of years, that's really taking off. And a ton of YouTube videos out there. I know Florida Sportsman's done a ton of content on that stuff, kind of showing people how to do that. So check that out. That is, if you're an offshore fisherman, you need to get dialed into that slow pitch jigging and the long fall jigging.
I couldn't agree more. Steve, that's a great report, and I don't mind telling you, you've got the best fishing we've had coming all the way down the East Coast right now. I'm tickled for you.
Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, hopefully those afternoon rains will keep coming and keep your fish biting inshore and offshore. We look forward to getting another report from you next week, if that's all right.
Yeah, let's hope it's just as good.
I hope so indeed. Thanks so much, buddy. We appreciate it.
All right, sounds good, Rick.
Now let's pull into the Southwest area and talk with our old buddy, Captain Greg Stamper from Snook Stamp Charters. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing good, Rick. I didn't catch any sailfish this week, but everything else is fantastic.
How many did you miss?
I went 0 for 0.
Been there plenty of days.
It's all good. Hey, let me tell you what's going on down here. The inside bite for the juvenile tarpon this week was insane, and we've got great tides this coming week, so it's not going to change much. If you were out early, the tarpon that are juveniles tend to about 50 pounds, just were on fire all week. Even with a lot of people who didn't know what they were doing, didn't know how to battle the king, were just kind of new at fishing. We went 18 for 42 this week.
Good gracious.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. And we're only going to get into better tides. So if anybody is interested in doing tarpon, you go with wherever you want to go. You know kind of where they should be. You got to go way early. So I've been starting at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. And if you don't get out there by 7:38, you're probably not going to have that bite.
Greg, I'm going to tell you right now, you give me the first 45 minutes of daylight. You give me the last 45 minutes of daylight. I'll give you the rest of the day, and most days I'll match your catch.
I'm right there with you, Rick. But, this time of year, because it's so hot down here, I mean, we're in the certainly the feels like it's probably 100 by 10 or 11.
Woo!
So fishing early has been the key for most things. Now, a couple of days, I didn't get people that would show up at 5 or 6 in the morning, so we started around 7:30. The redfish bite has been good, but it has to be the last of the incoming or the first of the outgoing. Otherwise, it's been a little bit slower just because when things get stagnant and it's hot out, these fish aren't eating. Now, the crazy part about the inshore stuff still is the snook were on the beach full time for a little bit. They came out of their spawn. They were hungry. They were cruising the beaches. Rick, we've had northwest winds down here in southwest Florida.
Really? That's strange.
Yeah, I know. So I'm just telling you, that messes up our beaches. And I don't even know. They may still be on the beaches. Those snook may still be on there. But there's just too many waves and the water's turned up. So I really can't tell you if they're there or not. And that's the reality. Now, there's a couple guys who did get a few days they were able to get out there offshore. During the summer, we get these really strong sea breezes that start early in the morning and they just blow wind hard onto the shore. And if you get out there 20, 30 miles, it really does calm down. I had a captain at my marina, talked to him this morning when I was out getting bait, and he told me that he had a 70-pound wahoo come up behind his boat while he was throwing out old pinfish while they were going out there for red snapper.
That's a good one.
He hooked it, didn't have the right rod and reel, Rick, and guess what happened to his line?
He ain't got no more fishing line.
He ain't got none. It's gone.
Yep, it gone. Yep.
It's gone. It's gone.
Yep.
He said the fish actually came up and looked at him because he stopped throwing pinfish. And so he threw some out just trying, and it didn't happen so good for him. But he did do very well on red snapper. Rick, he's out there in 180 feet, which, if you know my neck of the woods,
that's a long ways, brother.
We're talking about your trip from Miami to Bimini.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah, that's a long ways.
He did good, but he did miss the trophy that was there in front of him. Now, the inshore guys, they are still doing well on three tarpon and they're rolling up into our beaches. Boca Grande has been just slicked out and fantastic this week. Off of Sanibel and Captiva, there's been a lot of good fish caught, but it's only been when that, before that wind shifted and came from that northwest. So the guys who did the permit this week did well, but they had to go much further out, which is kind of the same thing as the guys had to do for the red snapper. So I don't know. It is what it is, Rick. I can just tell you one thing. The inshore bite is on fire. We got great tides, and that's about as far as I can go with this report for sure.
Greg, I got so tickled Thursday night. My boat is in Stuart, so when it's not at home, I don't pay that much attention to what's going on at home. But Thursday night, I'm laying there sleeping with my windows open right there at the inlet. We had a good sea breeze that night. And about 11:30, boat goes by, and I think, well, that's got to be the Coasties. Here comes another one. Here comes another one. I'm like, what in the world? Where's everybody going at 11 o'clock at night? And then it hit me. Snapper season opened at midnight. Greg, you're only allowed one. You don't have to go at midnight.
Well, Rick, what's going to happen. As soon as them red snapper realize that they're now a target, they're going to move deeper and deeper and deeper.
Hey, Greg, do you know that if you have 4 engines on your boat and you burn 135 gallons an hour and you run 50 miles out and each person catches their red snapper and you run 50 miles home, you know what you've got?
You've got like $300 a pound snapper.
You've got free snapper. Yeah, honey. Look! I brought us home dinner. It's free fish. That's the lie we tell ourselves anyway.
Good stuff.
Got you, Cap. Well, look, I really appreciate the report, Greg. We look forward to talking with you next week.
All right, tight line. Talk
You
to you
too.
next week, buddy.
Thank you, brother.
Bye.
Hey, listen, Greg and all of our action spotters every week are brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara, Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat, spay, and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalube marine engine oils.
What?
Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalube full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalube marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha. Reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to its name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to use second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Now let's come up into the West Central region and talk to a new buddy of mine. We've only been friends now for about, 23 years. My good pal, Ray Markham. How are you, bud?
I'm still hanging in there, 23 years and holding, bud.
I know it. I'm proud to still be here, too. I don't know about you.
Yeah, buddy. That's right.
I want to hear about the fishing in West Central.
Well, probably the last 4 or 5 days, we've had a lot of strong west winds. Had some tarpon trips that are canceled for for the bumpiness on the beach that just, you can't keep people standing up on their feet. So forced to go inside, working on the inside, had real good success with a lot of trout. And I don't care whether the guys are fishing live shrimp, artificial shrimp, but shrimp seems to be the deal this last week. Talked to several different captains that used an assortment of baits, thread fins, scale sardines, white bait, and shrimp. And by far, live shrimp outproduced everything else. So I don't care if it's artificial or live, but that seems to be what was going on this week. Same thing goes with a bunch of guys that are fishing snook around the rivers, the mouths of the rivers, and passes. But I did talk to a couple guys that I guess they just wanted to sit and drink beer, but they sat on these docks around the passes, soaking a live pinfish on the bottom, and they got some behemoth snook. So the snook fishing's been good, even though we got kind of mediocre tides this week. Other than that, the guys that are offshore are finally getting back offshore. I talked to a few of them that said that the water was pretty dirty out to about the mid-range reefs, which is, I don't know, you're talking 60 to 80 feet. So they're telling me by the time they finally got out, they got some clean water. They finally found a bunch of Spanish mackerel. And if they continued out to deeper water, 80 to 100 feet, they were actually getting on some decent kingfish, working on some hard bottom rocks, ledges and things like that. Dropping for grouper and snapper, they managed to get some nice kingfish out there in the 30-pound range. So all is not lost, and guys are still busy catching fish.
I would assume that your red snapper season still being open, guys are still pretty much limited out every day.
Well, yes, they are, and that's primarily, obviously, for not the recreational anglers, but only the ones with the federal permits and whatnot.
Okay.
They got until August 1st, through August 1st, to get out and do that. And, I mean, just the normal guys inshore fishing, recreational anglers, their season closed some time back. So if they're not out booking trips with these guys, and I know there's a bunch of guys with permits, then they're missing out because they're sure catching some nice fish.
Oh, we've seen some beautiful fish on the East Coast in the last few days. A sweet lady our age that had never offshore fished before last night caught a 28 on 28-pound red snapper on her trip on the party boat. So there had been
pounds
some
or inches?
Pounds.
Pounds, oh my, yeah.
Yeah.
A nice one, definitely.
28-pound fish is a big red snapper, I promise you.
Yeah, you got that right.
Yep. Well, Ray, it sounds like fishing's been good in your area. I got to tell you, the West Coast this week has done a lot better than the East Coast has.
Oh, wow. That's good to hear.
Yeah, it's been tough
for you all, but for us.
Yeah, it's been tough for the boys on the East Coast. Have you heard anything from the scallopers yet?
No, actually, we've got a brief scallop season for the Pasco County region, and strictly it's only like a 10-day thing. This starts, I want to say, gosh, now you got me on the spot.
Yeah, I think it starts the 17th.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's
okay.
it. I knew it was something like that.
Yeah, well, hopefully there'll be plenty of them there because, man, I can eat me some bay scallops.
No, I could.
Ooh, I know it. We appreciate it as always, Ray. We look forward to talking with you next week.
Yeah, buddy. We'll catch you later.
All right. Ray Markham giving us a West Central report. I got to tell you, I had a good time just about a week ago today, actually, or maybe a week ago Wednesday. I got to go over and fish with Captain William Tony in the Big Bend area and scallop with him. Tony, we had the time of our lives.
I did too. I tell you what, Rick, it was great being out there with your grandsons and getting those scallops. A little bit windy conditions, but, that's less laid down this week, of course. But, it seems that the scalloping was a little slow at first, but it seems to be picking up with a little bit better conditions out there.
Well, let me tell you guys about William Tony. My one grandson, who is very nearsighted, came back to the boat in tears because he could not see the scallops on the bottom. So William just stepped right up, jumped in the water, said, come over here, and pointed them out to him one at a time. Before you know it, he was the happiest kid in Homosassa.
Well, Rick, that's cool. You know what? The young people, getting in there and being comfortable and things like that and catching fish, that's our future generation. So I'm happy. He is a sport. I understand. I wear glasses too, and sometimes even that day was probably one of the most difficult conditions there was. A lot of west wind, a lot of overcast conditions. I had water going in my snorkel. But little man hung, and he got the scallops, and, that's what it's all about.
Oh, William, and I got to tell you, where we stopped there at the shed, to get those scallops and redfish fried up, holy smokes. There is nothing better for a kid than have them go out and pick up a bag of scallops and stop on the way home and catch a redfish and then get it fried up for the family. Perfect day, William. Absolutely perfect.
Excellent. You know, it was a fun day for me, Rick, and just hanging out with you and being out there on the water. You know, sometimes being guides, you can't always pick the conditions, but what you can do is make the day the best that you possibly can. And, you know, and being with a crew like you, it just makes it that much easier.
It was just a blast. Well, tell me what's happened since I've been gone. What's your fishing like?
All right. Fishing has been all inshore. We still have that westerly flow. So I did see Captain Chris Wilkins ran offshore today. He had his limit of American red snapper offshore at about 60 foot. Had a couple gags also and some big mangoes. So, you know, the wind had let down on that westerly flow. So that allowed the offshore. Back inshore, redfish bite still good, using live pinfish or cut pinfish, looking for those reds to get up underneath the mangroves. They're not laying out on the points, they're up underneath. So you want to look for those cuts and things that are up under heavy hanging mangroves and get that bait up underneath there. Sea trout back inshore at about 3 to 4 feet, using popping corks with either glow or watermelon red flake mirror lures, little johns, looking for that kelp. That's the key to it. Now that the wind's let down, I may be able to get out to that 8 to 10 foot range.
Good deal. Good deal. And you say the scalloping has improved as the week went by, huh?
It has, as long as the wind is let down. And, you know, we had talked a little bit earlier on text about, you know, limits and things like that. And, you know, our area, something I got to tout about that our sea trout fishing has improved. And we kind of tried to limit ourselves here on the Big Bend by no captain's take, no fish over 19 inches except just one in the vessel instead of our old limits at 15 to 20 inches and 5 per angler and 1 over 20 per angler. So if I had 3 folks in the boat, you're looking at, you know, 3 fish over 20. And if they pressure a captain, then they could keep his 4th too. So now that that's not in the equation, I'm starting to see the benefits of it starting to peak out here on the Big Bend and the Nature Coast on more trout and nice sized trout. Today we released a 24-inch trout that was just, you know, in our area we don't get giants, you know, the 28 to 30-inch size sea trout, but a 24-inch trout here on the Nature Coast and the Big Bend is a good solid fish. And seeing more and more of those, especially in July, is a good thing, because our sea trout fishing doesn't pick up until around the end of August through September, October, when that water starts to cool.
Well, Cap, I got to tell you, and you just hit the nail right on the head. It is not the regulations that will save our fishery. It's the attitudes of the fishermen. And when you guys guys can self-regulate and you don't feel bad telling your charters, hey, you've got 2 trout or you've got 3 trout, let's let this one go, or this one's 25 inches. We want to be very careful releasing this one. And the charters, from everybody I talk to, they're starting to buy in too. They understand the situation.
Absolutely. I try to tell them before, you know, they raised our limit a while back to 2 redfish a person. And what had happened in the year and a half to 2 years of that regulation went in, I find myself hunting all day to get those 2 redfish per angler. Now, when it dropped back down to 1 redfish like it should be per angler, we're catching more quality fish, and you get that 1 red per angler. And if you got 2 on board, you're talking, you know, a meal for 4 to 5 people easily with 2 nice big keeper reds. And instead of, you know, hunting all day to try to catch 4 reds, you're getting more fish, you're catching more fish, and you're keeping that quality of fish, you know, relevant here in a very pristine area.
Excellent point. Excellent point, William. I appreciate it so much. And I know that we talked about reducing limits a little bit earlier. Now, you'd like to see a reduction in the scallop limit, would you not?
We had talked about that, reducing the scallop limit or shortening the season. And here's my take on that. If you open the season earlier and it's a 2-gallon, limit per diver, we'll say, early in the season, those scallops are a lot smaller. Mm-hmm. So you're getting more per volume from a smaller scallop. If you kind of let the season progress into later July or August, and those scallops will grow larger, you're getting less scallops per volume, but bigger meat inside the scallop. So there's a couple different ways to look at it. But, the thing is, when you got a ton of people out there doing it and it's starting to get a little stressed as the population, we got to start thinking about that. And, I'd love to have it forever. I don't want to see it ever close down again. But, this may be some kind of choice that we're going to have to make as, stewards of the Gulf to make sure this thing can last forever for our children and everybody else's.
I agree. And what a pleasure it was to spend a day with you on your Tremblay. And she's a great boat and a great way to entertain your kids and grandkids. I can't recommend Captain William Toney enough. Thank you, bud. We'll talk next week.
All right. You have a great week.
You too. Now, my next trip, I can't wait to get out into the Northwest area and fish with Captain Kevin Lanier on his big new World Cat. Kevin, are you with us?
Captain Rick, I'm with you tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing great, buddy. How's the red snapper season going for you?
It is still off the chart.
Mm-hmm.
We had a little bit of weather and some ripping current this last few days, but we got out today. We had a trip. We got some really nice gags and red snapper, and it was just, one of those days that you get the right group and the right conditions, and it just all fell into place.
Oh, you can't beat it. You can't beat it. That's outstanding. How many anglers did you have?
We had 3 anglers today, which makes it really nice because that gives me some flexibility, and I'm able to run a little bit further on a half-day trip to doing that, and we wound up getting 4 nice gags, a scamp, and a limited red snapper.
Whew, that's a good half a day, Cap. That's a really good half a day. I sent a lady just about my age, which would put her at a young 67, on the party boat last night to catch the last part of it for the Northeast area, and she caught a 28-pound red snapper.
That is an excellent red snapper. Our biggest to date is 27, so that's a phenomenal red snapper.
Yeah, that was a gorgeous fish. Have you had any days on the red snapper season that you haven't limited?
I think it was Friday and Saturday this past week. We had a really strong southwest wind and a really strong current. Basically, I had 20 ounces on the lines, and I was both engines in reverse to stay at 45 degrees.
Oh, my word.
On the line. So we got fish, but we didn't limit. I could tell by just looking at my sounder that those fish were laying low to the structure and down in the cavern. So we struggled on a full day trip to get those fish, but we did not limit on our red snapper. However, that particular day, we got a handful of lanes, some blacks. We got some, believe it or not, I'm going to have to tell you this one real quick, 120 feet of water. First drop, we got a daggum flounder. We measured him, and he was legal. Believe it or not.
I'll be darned. We see that. I've seen that on occasion. I have caught flounder in 120 feet. So that gives me hopes that maybe there's flounder in more areas than we think.
Well, maybe so. I mean, it was just like we reeled it up, and I said, "You've got to be kidding to me," and we have to measure it.
I'll be darned. That's funny. Have you heard anything from inshore?
Inshore slowed down because that water's so dang warm on the beach. The guys are still getting some flounder out of the canals and around the close end. Not too many trout reports or anything like that. I have seen a couple of redfish come off the beach. So they're out there. I think you just have to put your time in, especially early in the morning and late in the evening to get your best opportunity for that.
Kevin, when we were kids, do you remember being this hot?
I don't think we paid attention to it as kids. I think we're a whole lot more susceptible to the heat, the cold, the older we get.
Man, I tell you, I sure must be. Well, Cap, as always, we appreciate it. Now, how many more days of snapper season you got?
We got to the 31st of July, and we're booked every day except for Friday this week, and we're booked all the way through the end of the month.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Kevin.
All right, we will talk to you guys again next week.
All right, buddy. Captain Kevin Lanier from KC Sport Fishing. Well, we sure can't conclude a trip around Florida without stopping in the corner. That's all the way out in the Panhandle, and that's where we find Captain Tyler Massey. Tyler, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How are y'all doing?
Doing fine. Tell me how your red snapper season's going.
Oh, it's going good. We're getting the last stretch here, last couple of weeks of the season. We got about 3 more weeks left, and it's getting a little slower, a little tougher, but there's still plenty of fish out there to be caught.
I see. What are you catching? What's your bycatch while you're catching them?
So right now we're catching, vermilion snappers, which is a great eating fish. And We're catching some cobias. We're getting like our little reverse migration. We catch them on the wrecks this time of year every year in July. So we're getting a few cobias here and there. King mackerels. When we put that fly line out the back, we're catching some nice king mackerels too. So it's been good trips, lots of action, a lot of variety.
Oh, that's outstanding. Have you heard anything from way offshore? Anything from the rigs or anything?
The tuna fishing's been pretty good. The guys that have been going have been getting, decent number of fish. They're probably in the 40 to 60 pound range fish. Not the big jumbos that we see in the fall and in the spring, but they're catching some, good numbers of those regular, nice eating size fish.
Gotcha. Good deal. Any word on the inshore?
Yeah, inshore fishing, it's kind of getting in the dog days of it here in the Panhandle where it's super tough. It's just when it gets so hot. We've had some, 100+ degree heat indexes over here. I'm sure y'all have too. And it's just getting a little tough, So the flounder fishing's getting a little better. And the guys are catching those a little bit better up towards the river, like in Escambia River and Blackwater River. So the mouth of the rivers is where they're catching a few of those. And then, just the speckled trout and redfish, they're still around. Just going to be tougher to get a bite.
Gotcha. Well, that's an outstanding report. Now, you're booked through every day through snapper season?
I think my next day open is the 24th of July. And I'm sure it'll book here in the next couple of days.
Somebody needs to jump on that, I promise you. Captain Tyler, we appreciate it as always and look forward to talking with you next week.
All right, man. Sounds good.
That concludes our trip around the state tonight, including our little fantasy trip out to Costa Rica. I got to tell you, it sounded to me like the left coast had it the better this week. The east coast seems to be taking quite a pounding from the heat. The fish have not been cooperating once you get further south. Now, the red snapper, of course, everybody caught them. That should teach the South Atlantic Council something, but probably won't. Didn't hear of a lot of grouper coming in with the snapper, and the dolphin bite that we seemed to have a couple of weeks ago is pretty well petered out. It's just the dog days of summer. We got to deal with it. Tell you what, doesn't bother the tarpon fishermen. They're doing great around the inlets. The shrimp boats dragging are all holding both tarpon and sharks. Once you get down into the Keys, Captain Nick Stanczyk said the swordfish are slow. So I guess maybe the heat affects them too. As you come around to the west, things start getting better. Steve Dahl talked about very good fishing for the guys both offshore and early morning. If you can get there early morning, the afternoon rains have cooled the water off and the juvenile tarpon are ready to go. Up around Ray Markham's area, he said the water's dirty, but once you get out to about 60 to 100 feet, it clears up and the Spanish and the kingfish are right there. Kevin Lanier's having the time of his life on his new boat. He is pounding the snapper and the big grouper, even catching some nice scamps. Running his charters, he's got till the end of July. In fact, he's only got one more day open. If you got the chance, you might want to grab it. Tonight's podcast has been brought to you, just like each and every week, by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Fishing, your dream destination. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat, spay, and offshore hybrid boats? You need to check out youngboats.com. Hey, it's been fun traveling around the state tonight. We certainly hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And if you did, please be so kind as to let us know about it. You can subscribe to our podcast, and we sure wish you would. We enjoy putting it out there, and we sure hope you enjoy listening to it. Until next week, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we will see you on the rip.